thanks for listening. This is Brian Hurley from Business Performance Improvement. The podcast Lean Six Sigma Bursts are short lessons, comments, Q&A, and insights. If you have a question, send your question through the Anchor app, and we might feature you on a future episode. Or contact me at biz-pi.com.
What we've been talking about when we deal with means and standard deviations is parametric analysis. I want to spend a little time on nonparametrics, which have to do with quartiles and medians and less calculation-based analysis. We're going to look at something called the one-sample sign and Wilcoxon test, and a Mann-Whitney and a Moods median test, and a Kruskal-Wallis test. These might be new to you. We're also going to look at Spearman correlation, which is different than the Pearson correlation. Then we'll talk about the outlier test.
The normal distribution has the symmetric shape like this. It's balanced evenly on either side. We know how much data falls within a certain range of values. We have plus or minus 1 standard deviation, plus or minus 2 standard deviations. These percentages we could calculate out very easily. So they base it on the normal distribution. But if your data doesn't have a normal distribution, it's a little complex to introduce this in Greenbelt. People are just learning about some of these tools and methods. And so all of our examples and all of our discussion is around the normal distribution data. But we need to look at situations where we don't have a normal distribution. And that's not right or wrong. It's just that sometimes our data doesn't fit this shape. And so what do? One option is that we can transform the data, or we can use these nonparametric tests, because a lot of these tests do not assume your data has to be a normal distribution. So that makes it flexible and an option for us to use without having to make our data into a normal distribution.
We'll be dealing with stuff like ranks and quartiles and medians instead of averages and standard deviations.
When we want to transform the data, we might not want to simplify our data and lose some of the power in the analysis, because we will lose a little bit of power and the ability to detect differences when we go from parametric to non-parametric. But we don't have the assumptions around the normal distribution that we do with a lot of those tests. If I want to get my data to fit a normal distribution, I want to have more power, and I don't want to simplify the data down too much, then you use a transformation. When we have the option for a non-parametric test, we can do that because we want to keep the data in its original values. We don't want to transform or change the numbers. Or maybe our data is more like scores and ranks and grades, and it fits better to this situation.
Let me pause for a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Creative Safety Supply. Creative Safety Supply is a great resource for free guides, infographics, and continuous improvement tools. I recommend starting with their 5S guide. It includes breakdowns of the 5 pillars, ways to begin implementing 5S, and even organization tips and color charts. From red tags to floor markings, it's all there. Download it for free at creativesafetysupply.com/5S.
If we have small samples, the non-parametric test works really well, especially if we don't know what the shape of the distribution is. We have 5 data points. I don't know what that shape looks like. Is it a normal distribution? Is it more like this or like this? We don't know. These tests work better because it doesn't assume you have to have a specific shape. Or if we do this test and we see a lot of skewed results, non-normal patterns, or just an unknown distribution shape, we can use nonparametrics. Outliers very heavily affect parametric tests. They don't affect non-parametric tests as much. So if we're unsure whether that's an outlier or if we should leave it in or remove it from our analysis, with a parametric test, we can leave it in. It doesn't get affected by it as much. It's not as sensitive. It doesn't change our calculations of the median. The median does not get affected as much by outliers as the mean does. So these are reasons that we might want to do a non-parametric test. So we'll go through some of the common ones. I've seen this in our Greenbelt class, that maybe about a third of the projects require a non-parametric test instead of the traditional ones we teach, like 2-sample T or 2 proportion tests. I end up recommending that they do this non-parametric test, and then I show them how to do it. It does come up that the non-parametric can be a really good test to use.
When I studied statistics, I took a course in school called Nonparametrics. I found it very interesting, but I didn't see it talked about very much in the Six Sigma training. But as I've gotten into more different situations with data, I see a lot more situations where these non-parametric tests are very helpful. So I wanted to have a separate section to show you that there are some good tests you can use that don't require the normal distribution data. I actually took another course. The person teaching it worked in an environmental monitoring service. So he did a lot of stuff on water quality, and said a lot of the data in water quality is non-normal. And so he had to learn a lot of non-parametric tests to use to study and run analysis. He explained how these tests work, and I got a lot of exposure to those tests, seeing it in that industry. But I don't do a lot of stuff with data water quality now. But if your data is non-normal, these non-parametric tests will be really helpful.
Whether you work in a manufacturing company, at a hospital, within a government agency, or volunteer at a nonprofit organization or NGO, continuous improvement is necessary and essential. For the past 25 years, I've been helping organizations implement Lean and Six Sigma methods into their culture. And I've compiled all this knowledge into the 7 best practices that are essential to any organization. If you sign up with your email, you will receive a link to the YouTube video, you will receive an audio podcast, and a summary document you can download. The video takes less than 30 minutes to listen to, and it will help you fully leverage the power of these methods and ensure your organization has a solid improvement culture and foundation. Go to biz-pi.com and look for the 7 continuous improvement best practices document.